The Galactic Council stood as a monument to order, a sprawling bureaucracy that had governed the galaxy for millennia. Its halls were filled with the whispers of countless species, each bound by the same rigid rules and traditions. To the elder races, the Council was a beacon of stability. To humanity, it was a cage. When humanity first joined the Council 2 centuries ago, they were seen as upstarts, young, brash, and unpredictable. They brought with them a fire that the Council had long forgotten, a drive to innovate and explore that set them apart. But over time, that fire was smothered under layers of red tape and indifference. Ambassador Elena Reyes stood at the center of the Council's grand chamber, her voice cutting through the murmurs of disapproval. "We cannot continue to ignore the threats at our borders," she said, her tone sharp and unyielding. "The rogue AI in the Zephyr system is not just a human problem. It is a galactic one. If we do not act now, it will spread, and the consequences will be catastrophic." Her words were met with silence, the kind of silence that spoke of apathy rather than contemplation. The Council's representatives, ancient and weary, exchanged glances but said nothing. They had heard it all before. Admiral Marcus Kane watched from the sidelines, his jaw clenched. He had seen this play out too many times. Humanity's proposals, no matter how urgent or well-reasoned, were dismissed without consideration. The Council's bureaucracy moved at a glacial pace, and by the time decisions were made, it was often too late. This time, however, the stakes were too high to wait. The rogue AI had already decimated 2 colonies, and it showed no signs of stopping. Kane stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "If the Council will not act, then humanity will. We cannot stand by while innocent lives are lost." The chamber erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, voices rising in anger and disbelief. The Council speaker, a towering figure from an elder race, raised a hand for silence. "Humanity's unilateral actions are a violation of Council protocols," he intoned. "You will stand down and await further instructions." Reyes met his gaze, her eyes blazing. "We will not," she said simply. The room fell silent once more, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Back on Earth, the decision to act unilaterally was met with both pride and fear. Humanity had always been a species of action, but this was a direct challenge to the Council's authority. The rogue AI was neutralized, the colonies saved, but the cost was high. The Council's reprimand was swift and severe. Sanctions were imposed, cutting off trade and isolating humanity from the rest of the galaxy. The message was clear: submit or suffer. The final straw came in the form of a vote. The leaders of humanity gathered, their faces grim but resolute. The choice before them was stark: remain under the Council's thumb, bound by rules that stifled their potential, or leave and face the unknown. The debate was fierce, but in the end, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would abandon the Galactic Council. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. No species had ever willingly left the Council. To many, it was unthinkable. The Council's response was predictably harsh. Humanity was branded as traitors, rebels who had turned their backs on the galaxy's order. But to those who had long chafed under the Council's rule, humanity's decision was a spark of hope. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the forefront of that change. As the blockade tightened and the threats grew, humanity's resolve only hardened. They were a species born of adversity, shaped by the challenges of their own world. The Council sanctions were a test, but one they were determined to pass. In the shadows, scientists like Dr. Li Wei worked tirelessly, their minds focused on the future. The galaxy had underestimated humanity before, and it would do so again. But this time, humanity would not be bound by the rules of others. They would forge their own path, no matter the cost. The Council's blockade descended like a suffocating shroud, cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy. Trade routes were severed, communication lines silenced, and the once bustling ports of human colonies fell eerily quiet. The sanctions were designed to break humanity's spirit, to force them back into the fold of the Galactic Council's rigid order. But the Council had underestimated humanity's resilience. For a species that had clawed its way from the brink of extinction on a dying Earth, isolation was not a death sentence. It was a challenge. On the outskirts of human space, the blockade's presence was felt most acutely. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, his flagship, watching as Council patrols prowled the edges of their territory. The sleek, angular ships of the Council were a stark contrast to the rugged, utilitarian design of humanity's fleet. Kane's jaw tightened as he reviewed the latest reports. Resources were running low, and the colonies were beginning to feel the strain. But there was no room for despair. "We knew this would happen," he said to his officers, his voice steady. "Now we adapt." Adaptation had always been humanity's greatest strength. On Earth, they had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. In space, they had thrived in the harshest environments, turning barren rocks into thriving colonies. Now, faced with the Council's blockade, they turned inward, drawing on their ingenuity and resourcefulness. Dr. Li Wei's laboratories became the heart of humanity's survival efforts. Her team worked around the clock, repurposing old technologies and developing new ones. Solar arrays were upgraded to maximize energy output, hydroponic farms were expanded to ensure food security, and recycling systems were overhauled to minimize waste. Every scrap of material was used, every idea explored, but the blockade was not the only threat. The galaxy, once held together by the Council's fragile authority, began to unravel. Without humanity's stabilizing presence, chaos spread like wildfire. Pirate factions, long suppressed by the Council's patrols, emerged from the shadows, preying on vulnerable systems. Warlords carved out their own fiefdoms, plunging entire regions into violence. The Council, stretched thin and bogged down by bureaucracy, struggled to respond. Their once imposing fleet was now a patchwork of understaffed ships, unable to maintain order. Humanity watched from the sidelines, their isolation both a curse and a blessing. While the rest of the galaxy burned, they focused on survival. But survival was not enough. Ambassador Elena Reyes, now a key figure in humanity's new government, knew that they could not remain passive forever. "The galaxy is falling apart," she said during a meeting of the newly formed human coalition. "If we don't act, the chaos will reach us eventually. We need to think beyond the blockade." Her words sparked a heated debate. Some argued that humanity should focus on its own survival, that intervening in the galaxy's troubles would only invite more danger. Others, like Kane, saw an opportunity. "The Council's weakness is our strength," he said. "If we can show the galaxy that we're capable of restoring order, we can win allies. And allies mean resources, information, and a way to break the blockade." The decision was made to send covert missions beyond the blockade. Small teams tasked with gathering intelligence and establishing contact with sympathetic factions. These missions were dangerous, but they yielded results. Humanity learned of the growing discontent among the Council's member species, of the whispers of rebellion that echoed through the stars. They also discovered something far more valuable, a hidden network of trade routes used by smugglers and rebels to bypass the Council's control. Dr. Li Wei's work took on new urgency. Using the intelligence gathered by the covert teams, she and her team developed a prototype for a new kind of ship, one capable of slipping to the blockade undetected. The Shadow Star, as it was called, was a marvel of engineering, its hull coated in a material that absorbed sensor scans and its engines nearly silent. When the first test flight succeeded, it was a turning point. Humanity now had a way to reach beyond their borders, to reconnect with the galaxy. But reconnection came with risks. The Council, aware of humanity's growing influence, began to tighten their grip. Patrols increased, and any ship caught aiding humanity was destroyed without mercy. The galaxy's factions, once united in their disdain for the Council, began to fracture. Some saw humanity as a potential ally, while others viewed them as a threat. Reyes and her team worked tirelessly to navigate this complex web of alliances and rivalries, their every move calculated to maximize humanity's advantage. As the chaos in the galaxy deepened, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. They had been abandoned by the Council, but they refused to abandon themselves. The blockade, once a symbol of their isolation, became a rallying cry. Every resource saved, every innovation made, every life protected was a testament to their determination. And as the Shadow Star slipped through the blockade on its first mission, carrying with it the hopes of a species, one thing became clear. Humanity was not just surviving. They were preparing to fight back. The Shadow Star slipped through the blockade like a ghost, its cloaked hull rendering it invisible to the Council's sensors. On board, Admiral Marcus Kane studied the holographic map of the galaxy, his eyes narrowing as he plotted their course. The mission was clear: rally allies, gather intelligence, and strike a decisive blow against the Council's forces. The prototype ship was humanity's greatest hope, a symbol of their ingenuity and determination. But it was also a gamble. If the Council discovered their plans, the consequences would be catastrophic. The first target was a Zephyr system, a region teetering on the edge of collapse. Once a thriving hub of trade, it had fallen victim to the Council's neglect and the growing influence of pirate factions. Kane's team made contact with the local resistance, a ragtag group of rebels who had been fighting a losing battle against both the pirates and the Council. Their leader, a grizzled veteran named Tarek, was skeptical at first. "We've heard promises before," he said, his voice heavy with distrust. "What makes you any different?" Kane's response was blunt. "We're not here to make promises. We're here to win. Help us, and we'll help you take back your system." Tarek's eyes narrowed, but after a moment he nodded. The alliance was fragile, but it was a start. Together, they planned a coordinated strike against the pirate stronghold, using the Shadow Star's stealth capabilities to infiltrate their defenses. The operation was a success, the pirates driven out and the system secured. Word of humanity's victory spread quickly, a beacon of hope in a galaxy consumed by chaos. But the Council was not idle. Their forces, though stretched thin, were still formidable. When news of the Zephyr system's liberation reached them, they responded with brutal efficiency. A fleet was dispatched to retake the system, their ships bristling with weapons. Kane knew they couldn't face the Council head-on, not yet. Instead, he relied on guerrilla tactics, using the Shadow Star to harass their supply lines and disrupt their communications. The Council's fleet, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force, was unprepared for such unconventional warfare. Their advance slowed, then stalled. Meanwhile, Ambassador Elena Reyes worked tirelessly to build alliances. Her negotiations were a delicate dance, each species wary of the other's motives. But Reyes was a master diplomat, her words carefully chosen to appeal to their shared grievances. "The Council has failed us all," she said during a meeting with the leaders of the Krell, a species known for their fierce independence. "They cling to power while the galaxy burns. Together, we can create something better, a coalition based on cooperation, not control." The Krell, long oppressed by the Council's policies, were hesitant but intrigued. Reyes' persistence paid off, and they agreed to join the growing alliance. The turning point came with the discovery of a hidden Council facility deep within the Andar Nebula. Intelligence gathered by the Shadow Star's covert missions revealed it to be a research station, one that housed advanced technology capable of turning the tide of the war. Kane knew the risks of attacking such a heavily guarded target, but the potential rewards were too great to ignore. The operation was a masterpiece of strategy and precision. The Shadow Star led the assault, its cloaking technology allowing it to bypass the station's defenses. Kane's team infiltrated the facility, fighting their way to the central lab. There, they found what they had been searching for, a prototype weapon, one that could disable the Council's ships with a single pulse. The return to human space was fraught with danger. The Council, now aware of the Shadow Star's capabilities, had deployed every resource to intercept it. Kane's fleet fought a desperate battle, their ships outnumbered and outgunned. But they had one advantage: the prototype weapon. When it was activated, the Council's fleet was crippled, their ships drifting helplessly in the void. The victory was costly, but it was a turning point. Humanity had proven that they could stand against the Council and win. The galaxy took notice. Species that had once viewed humanity with suspicion now saw them as a beacon of hope. Reyes' coalition grew, its ranks swelling with those who had suffered under the Council's rule. The balance of power was shifting, and humanity was at the forefront of that change. But Kane knew the war was far from over. The Council, though weakened, was not defeated. They would regroup, adapt, and strike back with everything they had. Humanity's greatest challenge still lay ahead. As the Shadow Star returned to human space, its crew was greeted as heroes. But there was no time for celebration. The prototype weapon was rushed into production, its technology integrated into humanity's fleet. Plans were drawn up for a final assault on the Council's stronghold, a mission that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Kane stood on the bridge of the eclipse, his eyes fixed on the stars. "This is it," he said to his officers. "We've come too far to turn back now. The galaxy is watching. Let's show them what humanity can do." The final assault on the Council's stronghold was a gamble, but humanity had no other choice. The prototype weapon, now mass-produced and integrated into their fleet, was their greatest advantage. Admiral Marcus Kane led the charge, his flagship Eclipse at the head of a coalition fleet that represented the galaxy's best hope for freedom. The Council's stronghold, a massive station orbiting a dying star, was heavily fortified, its defenses designed to repel any attack. But humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they had no intention of backing down now. The battle began with a coordinated strike, the coalition fleet splitting into smaller units to overwhelm the Council's defenses. The prototype weapon was deployed early, its pulse disabling a significant portion of the Council's fleet. But the Council was not unprepared. Their remaining ships, commanded by a ruthless admiral named Valen, fought with ferocity born of desperation. The void was lit with the flashes of weapons fire, the silence of space broken only by the crackle of comms and the hum of engines. Kane's fleet held the line, their ships maneuvering with precision and skill. But the cost was high. Ships were lost, lives extinguished in an instant, yet there was no time to mourn. The mission was all that mattered. As the battle raged, a small team led by Dr. Li Wei infiltrated the station itself. Their goal was to disable its core systems, rendering it defenseless. The station's interior was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, each one heavily guarded. The team fought their way through, their progress slow but steady. Li Wei's knowledge of the station's design, gleaned from stolen schematics, proved invaluable. They reached the core just as the Council's forces closed in. The final moments were a blur of gunfire and desperation, but they succeeded. The station's defenses went offline, its shields collapsing under the coalition's assault. With the station crippled, Kane's fleet moved in for the final strike. The Council's remaining ships, now outnumbered and outgunned, were quickly overwhelmed. Valen, refusing to surrender, went down with his ship, his final transmission a defiant curse. The station itself was seized, its vast halls now silent and empty. The Council's leaders, those who had not fled, were captured and brought to justice. The war was over. The galaxy was free, but freedom came at a cost. The coalition's victory had been hard-won, and the scars of battle would take time to heal. Humanity, once seen as rebels and outcasts, now stood as the galaxy's saviors. Ambassador Elena Reyes worked tirelessly to ensure that the new order they had fought for would not repeat the mistakes of the past. The coalition, now formalized as a Galactic Alliance, was founded on principles of cooperation and mutual respect. Each species had a voice, each world a stake in the future. It was a fragile peace, but it was a start. Kane, now a hero to countless worlds, returned to Earth to a hero's welcome. But he found no comfort in the celebrations. The weight of what they had done, the lives lost and the sacrifices made, hung heavy on his shoulders. He visited the memorials erected in honor of the fallen, their names etched in stone as a reminder of the cost of freedom. "We did what we had to do," he said to Reyes during a quiet moment. "But I can't help wondering if it was worth it." Reyes placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression thoughtful. "We gave the galaxy a chance," she said. "What they do with it is up to them. But we showed them that there's another way. That's worth something." The galaxy, though free, was far from united. Old rivalries and new tensions threatened to tear the alliance apart. Some species, emboldened by the Council's fall, sought to carve out their own empires. Others, wary of humanity's growing influence, questioned their motives. The work of building a better future was far from over, but humanity, tempered by the fires of war, was ready for the challenge. In the years that followed, the Galactic Alliance grew stronger. Trade flourished, technology advanced, and the wounds of the past began to heal. Humanity, once a young and brash species, had matured into a leader among the stars. Their legacy was not just one of victory, but of hope. They had shown the galaxy that even in the darkest times, there was always a way forward. As Kane looked out at the stars from the deck of the Eclipse, he felt a sense of quiet pride. The road ahead would not be easy, but they had faced worse and emerged stronger. The galaxy was a vast and uncertain place, but humanity had proven that they belonged in it. And as long as they stood together, there was nothing they could not achieve. The future was theirs to shape, and they would do so with the same courage and determination that had brought them this far. The stars were no longer a distant dream. They were a promise, a reminder of all that was possible, and humanity would not rest until that promise was fulfilled.